Good morning, guys. We are going to be discussing secondary succession today. We talked about primary succession yesterday and kind of created this diagram to help you guys visualize that change and that process. And so today we are going to talk about secondary succession and how it is different than primary. So you're going to need some colored pencils or coloring devices today. If you're coloring, if you're not able to print it, then you can feel free to draw these in your journal. I am going to be taking a grade on this, so you're going to need to take a picture of yesterday and today's notes to upload to today's assignment. So make sure that you are able to get both of those done. You're going to need orange, blue, light green, yellow, purple, dark green, and brown. So we're going to start with blue up here at the very top. We're going to color in our secondary succession words just like we did yesterday with primary, and we're going to kind of tie it to some key ideas that make secondary succession different than primary. And remember, with primary succession, it starts out with bare rock, right? There's no soil in that ecosystem, and so that soil has to be created before anything can grow, right? And those lichens and mosses, those pioneer species for primary succession, move in and create that soil so that grasses and flowers can move in, and as they decay, they create more soil, right? It's like a step-by-step process, right? That succession, that series of changes that happens. And secondary succession is a bit different because, if you remember from our notes on Monday, secondary succession starts with soil, right? So we're going to add in some key ideas right here underneath. Secondary succession starts with soil, right? So that soil doesn't have to be created. This means that it can happen faster than primary succession. It still, though, is going to take, hundreds of years. So it's still not a quick process, right? We're going to shade in our arrow here because this is that key idea that secondary succession happens after a disturbance in a climax community, and those disturbances can be a variety of different things. We're going to switch to our orange to talk about what some of those might be. Now, if you look at your diagram at the bottom of the page, you might be able to tell me what some disturbances or disasters might be. In the diagram below, we've got a forest fire, which is a very common way that secondary succession starts. Some areas of even the United States have forest fires every year, right? Like California, right? There's often forest fires there. In history, you guys have been talking about the Galveston hurricane. That can trigger the secondary succession beginning. Floods or tornadoes, right? There's lots of things that can trigger the beginning of secondary succession. Remember, the main thing to keep in mind is that there's only soil remaining. And so we're going to color in our tree down here with our orange. All right, and our tree is definitely on fire, right? We've got our forest fire raging on our little tree down here. And what's cool about some species of trees is that they have developed some adaptations that protect some of their seeds until a forest fire opens them. So, for example, the lodgepole pines, their cones, right, like pine cones, that they produce, some are regular pine cones like you're used to seeing, and some of them are pine cones that are covered with this like really thick wax. And that wax melts off when there's a forest fire and releases the seeds, which is good because then that means that the lodgepole pines can start to regrow in an area where a forest fire has happened. I want you guys to notice down here at the bottom, we've got soil when it starts, and we still have soil when after the disturbance, right? So we've got soil. And I just added that in brown. So soil is remaining. We have soil before and we have soil after. Okay. All right. So I'm going to shade my box up here in orange. All right. Now we're going to switch to yellow for that next step. And we are skipping that moss and lichen step, right? We're going straight to grasses and flowers. So what are going to be our pioneer species for secondary succession? Grasses and flowers, right? These are able to move in because there is soil present. And sometimes that soil has roots and seeds that were buried before the disaster. And so they're able to sprout and grow rapidly. So those grasses can regrow quickly. So if you look down here, you can see we've got some grasses and flowers, and we're going to color them in yellow so that we remember they go with our topic that's in yellow. We've even got one little kind of burned shrub over here that's growing some little mushrooms, right? These are all going to be examples of organisms that are able to bounce back quickly, right, after a year or two. We're also going to see shrubs, right? When we colored our shrubs purple yesterday. And the shrubs are going to be able to come back more quickly because of that space that they have in the soil, right? Deeper soil means that they're going to be able to come back more quickly, right? So we're going to color in our shrubs purple just like we did yesterday. These can be little bushes, small trees, little shrubs that we see in the forest or somewhere like that. Okay. Now we're going to be switching to our light green, right? We talked about what softwood tree examples we have earlier. And these are going to be plants like pine, cedar, and juniper. These are mostly evergreen, so I'm going to follow my little line back to my box. And remember, I was just talking about this fire resistance that they have. So these fire resistant seeds are going to sprout and be released by fire, right? And once we have shrubs and small trees, we're going to see more animals come back to the environment, right? So we're going to kind of zoom over here and color in our evergreen trees in green. Got a couple of them here. And these evergreen trees are actually going to provide a kind of safe space and protection for some small hardwoods to start to grow as well. Because remember, they're going to lose their needles, and that's going to keep providing new soil material to be added. So down here, I'm going to switch to my dark green because this is a little baby hardwood, right? So small hardwoods can start to move in. Okay. Now I'm going to come down here because I've forgotten to color in my soil, right? So we've got our brown soil that's providing that space for all of those root systems up to this point, right? All right, so now we're up here, and I'm using my dark green because we're going to be talking about our hardwood trees. And our hardwood trees, remember, are things like oak, pecan, maple, birch. Those are all hardwoods. These lose their leaves in the fall, right? So these softwoods, like the evergreens that we were talking about, are going to age and they're going to die, and then hardwoods can take over. This means that those larger herbivores like deer and other animals can move in to the area, right? And so now we've got this full big tree, but if you know anything about hardwoods, they don't grow quickly, right? We moved into my house 4 years ago and there were oak trees they planted, and they're still tiny little oak trees. They take quite a while to get bigger. So we've got our oak, hardwoods that are providing that habitat space and that safety. We've got obviously a lot of root space for these hardwoods to be able to grow. And remember, this can take, 200 years for this community to return to what it once was. So this is a slow process still. Now, we're going to turn our notes sideways, and I'm going to go back to my blue so that I remember that secondary succession, the goal is still to get to this climax community that is stable and changes very little. Remember, we have a high biodiversity here. Okay, so I'll zoom out so that if you missed something you can catch it. I hope that kind of gives you guys a visual of how we come from disaster and progress through larger and larger organisms that are able to live and survive in a particular ecosystem after disturbance happens, right? I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Remember, today's assignment, you're going to need to upload a picture of this set of notes and yesterday's primary succession doodle notes for an easy 100. So have a great day.